Welcome into the PFF College Football Show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wasserman. Dalton, we're going to do a mock draft today, but a different style of mock draft than the ones that you're used to seeing. In this mock draft, you can only take offensive players. So no defensive players will be taken in this mock draft. No Ruben Bain, no Arvell Reese, no Caleb Downs, no Sonny Styles. None of those guys will go in the first round in this draft. So obviously it's not a realistic one to the one that we'll see in April, but I do think it's a fun exercise to see, okay, if teams are going to go with an offensive position in the draft, what might they be targeting?
I absolutely agree. I think something to remember here is that teams do have needs. Every team has needs on both sides of the ball, even the best teams in football, right? When you think about Seattle and LA and New England, teams like that, they have needs on both sides of the ball, right? The other thing, too, that'll be fun about this one is that we have long considered this a defense-heavy draft class, right? That the defensive side of the ball is the better one, but it's going to be fun to get into the depth of this class, especially since we usually only do first-round mocks here. Okay, the second half of this mock draft, we're going to see some names, obviously, you won't probably won't see in the first round, but just to highlight some of those needs and what teams could do on day 2 and 3, I think it's going to be a really fun exercise.
Yeah, I can't wait to do this.
Especially with the trade that we just got yesterday, shaking up the first round with Trent McDuffie going to the Rams, or I should say earlier this week with Trent McDuffie going to the Rams, and the Chiefs, of all teams, getting a second first-round pick.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm excited to kind of go into this with you guys today, and obviously this one's going to be different than a lot of the mock drafts we'll do. We're actually going to do an all-defense-only mock draft coming out pretty soon, too. So I know we've been kind of doing the same mock draft over and over and over again. I want to try to switch it up a little bit in this style of mock draft. So Dalton, let's pull up the beautiful PFF mock draft simulator right now, which you can get, of course, for 25% off when you use the promo code PFFCFB25. You also get access to all the same grades, data, and analytics that every NFL team and every college football team uses, too. So let's pull up the mock draft simulator. Let's start the mock draft right now. Las Vegas Raiders at number 1. You want me to go number 1 just to get it out of the way?
I was going to ask you want to alternate, or you want to work together on this? How do we want to do this?
Let's alternate. I think let's alternate.
All right, you go first then, and
I can still take my number 1 player, and the number 1 pick is Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback out of Indiana. He will be the number 1 overall pick on draft day. Was a Heisman Trophy winner this past year, led Indiana to a perfect season and a national championship, one of the highest graded quarterbacks in college football. Like I said, he is pretty much locked into the number 1 overall pick in the actual NFL draft, and in an all-offense-only mock draft, he's also eligible to be picked here. So Fernando Mendoza will be the number 1 overall pick.
We'll certainly have more fun with the first pick when we get to the defense-only mock draft, when we're finally forced to not take Mendoza, but here, easy pick. Now it gets more difficult, right? So you talk about the Jets, about 99% sure come draft night they're going to take an edge rusher. And we've talked more about maybe them taking an offensive player at 16 or early in the second round with one of those 2 picks. Now that we're forced to, it gets interesting. Now the interesting part here with the Jets also is that, look, if they didn't already franchise tag Breece Hall, I would definitely take Jeremiah Love here. I think there's an easy argument to be made. He's the best offensive player in the draft. Now you start to look at, okay, is it offensive line? You know, they only have one open spot really at that left guard position. It's more likely wide receiver. So if we look at that and we go off either the PFF draft board or our own rankings from our top 10 episode, you got Carnell Tate, you got Mekhi Lemon, you've got Jordan Tyson as the top 3. I'm going to roll with our number 1 guy. I'm going to go with Mekhi Lemon here, number 2 overall. Again, if they didn't already franchise tag Breece Hall, or if this was a different team, in all likelihood, I would take Jeremiah Love. But because they already have Hall, and it would be kind of redundant, I'm going to go Mekhi Lemon, number 2.
I already know your answer to this, but any thought to Ty Simpson there, number 2 overall?
No, I might wait on that later.
Okay.
And you know me with the Jets draft strategy. Well, I can't build the defense here, but build the rest of this team. And then go quarterback in next year's hopefully loaded class.
All right, Mekhi Lemon goes number 2 overall to the New York Jets. At number 3 is the Arizona Cardinals. There's also a need at quarterback with Ty Simpson, but I'm not going to take him here at number 3. I'm actually going to go with the guy that I think they might take at number 3 overall, and that is Francis Mauigoa.
Ooh, Love. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to take him over Jeremiah Love right now. I think Jeremiah Love, I still think Jeremiah Love's worth a pick somewhere around this range, but I also want him to go to a team that's set up to win right now, because I think that, you know, teams that have a lot of needs on both sides of the ball should not be taking running backs with a number 3 overall pick, no matter how good they actually are. So I think the Cardinals need to build up that offensive line. They need a guy opposite of Paris Johnson Jr. At right tackle right now. I think Mauigoa, honestly, he might be the favorite to be the number 3 overall pick right now going into the draft. Actually, most Cardinals fans in the mock draft simulator select Francis Mauigoa over almost 20 24% of them select Francis Mauigoa, and the second most is Spencer Fano right there too. So a lot of Cardinals fans, over almost half of them, take a tackle with this pick. I'm going to take Francis Mauigoa, the right tackle out of Miami.
All right, there we go. Number 4 with Tennessee. This is interesting because I think there could be a thought about an offensive lineman. They do have a need both at center and at guard, but I think more likely is a skill player to help out Cam Ward. Now, I think this is also something that could be realistic. You know, we've talked a lot about the Titans needing edge defender and even corner on defense, but there is still a chance they take a skill player, especially I think about a Carnell Tate out there at receiver. So I think the two players that I think about here, you know, and they still have Tony Pollard. Do they take Jeremiah Love and try to jumpstart the backfield, or do we get Cam Ward, a potential number 1 receiver? That's the big question here. I think I'm actually going to lean in is with this being a little more realistic option. I'm going to go with Carnell Tate to add a deep threat to this offense. Now you've got Tate, you've got Alec Iamaner, you've got Shimray Dike. They might even add somebody in free agency as well. I'd fully expect them to. I'm also going to pass on Love here. I'm going to go receiver for my second straight pick. I'm going Carnell Tate to Tennessee.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think Carnell Tate is absolutely on the board there for the Tennessee Titans. They didn't run a fast 40, obviously, at the Combine, but also we kind of expected him to run somewhere in the 4.5s at the Combine, which is exactly what he did. So I still think he's going to be a top 10 pick in this draft and could be the number 4 overall pick in the actual draft to the Tennessee Titans. Number 5 here with the New York Giants.
Now, I will say, just throwing this out there, there have been rumblings that the Giants are looking for big-name running back help, including possibly Kenneth Walker in free agency, or maybe they would even think about Jeremiah Love here at 5.
They might.
Rumblings. Throwing it out there.
I don't think I'm going to do that, though. I do love Cam Scatterbo. Hopefully comes back fully healthy from that injury he had this past year. I do love him in that backfield. I like Tyrone Tracy, too, as a complimentary back. So I'm not going to take Jeremiah Love here because I do think the Giants have bigger needs at wide receiver and offensive line right now. I'm going to go with a guy that has very short arms, so there is a question about whether or not he can stick at tackle in the NFL. But Dalton, we're going to do, we just did our top 10 offensive lineman episode. He's still my number 1 offensive lineman in the draft. That's Spencer Fano, the tackle / guard / even center, if you want to call him that, out of Utah. For a Giants team that needs help on the interior and at tackle, I would start out Spencer Fano at tackle, see if he can play there opposite of Andrew Thomas. If it doesn't work out, you can always move him into to guard. He could be a Pro Bowl level guard, in my opinion. He's been phenomenal over the last 2 years at Utah. So I still would take Spencer Fano somewhere in the top 10. He's still my number 1 offensive lineman in the draft, even though he has well below average length for the tackle position.
They enter free agency with their starting right guard and their starting right tackle, both free agents. We'll see where that goes as the week develops. But right now, Spencer Fano, I think, to the Giants does make some sense to fill one of those spots on the right side. So I get it, building in the trenches, and we still have Jeremiah Love on the board. How about it?
True.
And the problem is I don't think I can go there with Cleveland either.
No,
right?
Krishan Junkins and Dylan Sampson.
I mean, they and they just so badly need O-line and wide receiver. The question is, do I go with the hot name right now in Monroe Freeling from Georgia? Do I try to get him a left tackle to complement Titus Howard? Do I take a player maybe I like a little better in Vanga Ioane and get an interior guy? Do I get a guard going 6 overall?
Jordan Tyson still here?
Jordan Tyson is still here, despite, obviously the medical history is a question. See, this is this kind of experiment, though, with the Browns picking at 24. Now I really got to test the depth of this class.
Yeah, you do.
This is the moment now where I go, do I like the offensive line depth better? Because I'm not getting Freeling in this exercise at 24.
No.
Or maybe not even Lomu or one of the other, left tackles, right? This is going to be the question. And the receiver depth is at least pretty good. I do like Jordan Tyson a lot. I do still think this is even a realistic possibility. There's some real questions here. Or maybe it's an exercise where I could double up at one or the other too. But I would say of those options, I like Tyson and Ioane best as players, but there's just not that many left tackles in this draft. What do you think here? This is a hard one considering the depth and then the scarcity. This is the problem with the lack of proven. Do I take my chances and get to 24 and see where it goes, or just trust him to get a left tackle in free agency?
I don't love Monroe Freeling. I think he's a very big boomer bust player in this draft. I get he has the best tools of any tackle in this class. I probably would go with Jordan Tyson here, the wide receiver, because I like his tape more.
Go with the receiver,
even though I know the medicals are scary. I still would take him over Monroe Freeling.
See, I'm tempted on Ioane too.
Could do that.
Because there is receiver depth. There's going to be at least a decent receiver, I think, unless we just go on a huge run of them, which we still might. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go with Tyson.
Okay.
And I'm going to see if I regret it at 24 later, because I just might.
All right, Jordan Tyson going number 6 to the Browns, who actually I think would be on the board for the Browns at number 6 overall. The Jeremiah Love slide stops here with the Washington Commanders. They could use more help in that backfield, and Jeremiah Love is by far the best player on the board right now in this offense-only mock draft. He might be the best player on the board, period, in the 2026 NFL draft, even with the number 1 overall pick, really. I think he might be the best player in this draft. Back-to-back elite grades at Notre Dame. I think he's 93.1 grade this year, led the nation, 91.1 grade last year, too. He has excellent athletic gifts for that size, running in the 4.3s in the 40-yard dash. Jeremiah Love is well worth a top 10 pick in this draft, and in an offense-only mock draft, this is actually a steal here, I think, at number 7 for the Commanders.
Absolutely agree. I do think it's a realistic possibility if he were to fall to 7, they would think about it, because just think about how enticing that backfield is with Jaden Daniels and his rushing ability when he's healthy, and Jeremiah Love, by far the best runner in this class, and what he can do. You talk about jump-starting that Washington offense, and they're at their best when they have balance and they have the explosive runs going. Nobody more explosive than Jeremiah Love, and him and Jaden Daniels in the backfield. Oh, yeah. Absolute nightmare. I like this pick a lot.
All right, New Orleans Saints here at number 8 overall.
All right, so the top 3 receivers are off the board. We've talked about the Saints needing an explosive playmaker, and so many mock drafts that we've seen have them going, okay, either running back with Jeremiah Love or wide receiver, right? But when you start to look at the board now and how it's shaken, do I want to go in Omar Cooper? Do I want to go Denzel Boston, KC Concepcion? Or there are still needs on this offensive line, right? I think about those guard spots, especially that left guard spot is one that's really a sore one for them. Yeah. And I think that's where I'm going to go here is I actually have Vega Ioane as the second best offensive lineman in this class behind Francis Malinois. I think he's a rock-solid left guard prospect. You get him in there with, obviously Kelvin Banks next to him on the left side, Talisi Fuanga on the right side. I think you're building a really good offensive line for Kellen Moore's offense here to protect Tyler Shuck. I'm going to go Ioane 8th overall to the New Orleans Saints.
Okay. Vega Ioane, the best guard in the 2026 NFL draft, going to New Orleans right there. A guy, Dalton, that I think could also be on the board there for the Saints. If you want to move him inside to guard, is Caden Proctor. He's actually who I'm going to go with here to the Kansas City Chiefs. I think he might be a perfect replacement for Jawan Taylor, who they plan to release this offseason. He could be a perfect replacement at right tackle for Kansas City. I think his best fit in the NFL might be at right tackle, just how massive a frame that he's got. He's very athletic for that size, too. And also Kansas City, even if Caden Proctor doesn't have the foot speed to stick at tackle, he could move inside to guard. Kansas City also needs help at guard, too. So I love Caden Proctor. He's my number 3 offensive lineman in the draft behind Spencer Fano and Francis Malinois. And honestly, he is right there with the two of them right there. I think it really is a clear top 3 tackles in this class. So I think Caden Proctor here in an all-offense-only mock draft with Jawan Taylor set to become a free agent after they cut him. I think Caden Proctor would certainly be a great pick here for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Fun also in this exercise because I'm sure after the recent trade that a lot of people are going to be mocking secondary to the Chiefs, whether that's corner or if Caleb Downs were to fall to them maybe. I mean, they traded McDuffie, but they've also got a lot of free agents in the secondary. With that not an option, they still have needs here on offense too. I think there's still needs at wide receiver as well. There's some people that would speculate and take Kenyon Sadiq here as the successor to Travis Kelce.
About it,
Got a lot of options here for sure, but I like shoring up that right tackle spot. They're going to cut Jawan Taylor. They already have cut Jawan Taylor, and Proctor filling in. As long as he can flip over to that right side and play, I think you've made a very good point here.
Appreciate it. All right, number 10 overall, the Cincinnati Bengals.
This is a hard one. One because so they re-signed Dalton Reisner. Their front 5, as long as they don't cut anybody else, it looks pretty set. So I don't really need offensive line help. So the question here is, to me, I'm going on the perimeter with a weapon. And does that mean the problem here for them at tight end, they still have a guy like Drew Sample in line. They have Mike Gesicki for the receiving work. Do I take a Kenyon Sadiq to add to the offense at the tight end position? Or my other thought here is either is a slot threat like an Omar Cooper or a KC Concepcion. That would, because to me, it's just this Bengals offense, even in the passing game, is always missing that third threat, right? Another guy who, outside of Jamar Chase, can do the after-the-catch work. I have Concepcion a spot or 2 higher in my wide receiver rankings. I think he's super explosive. I think you talk about adding after-the-catch to the screen game. And even, look, he proved, I think, at Texas A&M he can win vertically. It's just a matter of getting the accurate throws, which you certainly get from Joe Burrow. I'm actually going to go against what many people have as Cooper over Concepcion here. I'm going to go with KC and put him in the slot with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and add a really explosive player with the ball in his hands to this offense that outside of Jamar Chase, the Bengals just don't have. Give me wide receiver 3 for Cincinnati, Casey Concepcion.
Love that. I love Casey Concepcion. I think he's a really fun fit in that offense next to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. And like you said, kind of brings a different element, whereas T. Higgins has the great size and Jamar Chase obviously a great all-around game. Casey Concepcion could be that after-the-catch threat underneath that they really could use greatly in that offense too. So I like that pick a lot for Cincinnati. Number 11, the Miami Dolphins. I'm also thinking about taking a wide receiver here. I thought about Ty Simpson, too, to the Miami, but I want to see what they do in free agency first. I feel like Malik Willis might be going to Miami with Jeff Hafley. So we'll see what they do at quarterback in free agency. And I don't love Ty Simpson, even in an offense-only mock draft going this high at number 11 overall to a team that's going to have to start him immediately, most likely. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add some much-needed size in that receiver room right now. They have Jalen Waddle, right, the speed there. But Denzel Boston, I think, will bring a different element to this Miami receiving core right now. I love Denzel Boston. He's my number 3 receiver in the draft. I even had him over Jordan Tyson with the medical concern. So I'm a huge fan of Denzel Boston. I think he's well worth a first round, maybe top 20 pick in this draft. So in an offense-only mock draft, he's certainly on the board here for Miami at number 11 overall with a lot of the other receivers already gone off the board. I think Denzel Boston would bring a different element to that Dolphins receiving core they're kind of missing right now.
Very interesting there to pass on Simpson because I actually think – now, do I think it's likely? Not necessarily, especially with the Dolphins probably scouring the free agent market for quarterback help. But I do think even in the actual draft that this is where the Ty Simpson talk at least begins. Is I do think it's at least a possibility if the Dolphins don't get a viable solution in free agency, say Malik Willis, right, that they could really think about Ty Simpson with this pick. But I get it too. Look, they have needs on the offensive line. That would make sense. They have needs at receiver outside of Jalen Waddle, obviously. I think you could even argue tight end here with Kenyon Sadiq. I mean, they were using Darren Waller last year, and he's a free agent. So I think there's a lot of these picks that make a lot of sense. In short, the Dolphins have a ton of needs, and it's hard to go wrong here. But Boston is a good call there as a complement to Jalen Waddle.
So next up, Dalton, is the Dallas Cowboys, who have a ton of defensive needs, but you can't take a defender in this mock draft. So who are you taking for the Dallas Cowboys on offense?
Oh, this is a hard one. This is actually a really hard one because no one on the planet's making. And I got to do this twice with Dallas.
Yeah.
Every mock draft that we've seen has been back 7 on defense for Dallas with both picks very often, right? Linebackers.
It'll be easy for the defense-only mock draft we do later on.
Oh, it'll be the same. Yeah, they'll be the easiest one. But here, this is a harder one. See, I have a hard time with Omar Cooper here because he kind of would fill that same role as CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that works. I could go Kenyon Sadiq just to complement Jake Ferguson and just go, okay, let's let Brian Schottenheimer get in more 12 personnel. I could do that. I don't mind that as an extra receiving threat. I think it's Sadiq, or I bring in some competition at one or both of these tackle spots for Tyler Guyton and Terrence Steele, which I do think is kind of a weakness. Guyton through 2 years has not really performed up to the first-round hype. Terrence Steele has not been great for this team at right tackle. That's the question for me. Now, again, adding Sadiq, I think, does make this offense a lot more flexible. I think it could be a lot of fun. I'm not going to go running back here either. Maybe I'd think about it at 20, depending on where things fall, but I don't have another back even in this exercise that I would take 12th. I feel like Dallas is trying to win right now, aren't they?
They are.
The franchise tag Pickens. You're hoping obviously to extend him long term. Feels like they're going for it. I'm going to go with Sadiq. I'm going to create some fun 12 personnel packages here with Ferguson, Sadiq, Pickens. They re-signed Javonte Williams as well, CeeDee Lamb. We're going to do that. I'm going to take what probably many people think would be the best remaining weapon on the board here. Let's do it. Let's go Kenyon Sadiq and add him to Dallas's offense.
All right.
I heavy thoughts about offensive line there, offensive tackle, because I think if those guys don't get replaced, which they probably won't this offseason, I think they go into 2026 on the hot seat, and that might be a conversation we have about Dallas next year.
I completely agree with that. Yeah, I think they definitely could use an offensive tackle. It's actually where I'm going to go here. Should I do it or should I take Ty Simpson here for the Rams? I'm thinking about it.
Oh, I think there's also an Omar Cooper argument.
There's an Omar Cooper argument for sure.
I think there is. I mean,
my thought for tackle, because I was thinking about Monroe Freeling here, my thought was that Alaric Jackson's good at left tackle. McClendon had a really good year at right tackle, but I don't know if he's a long-term answer. But Monroe Freeling is a guy that I want to sit for a little bit and then start him later on when he's developed more physically and also mentally, because I think he is a boomer bust player that needs a lot of development right now. So it's almost a great situation, almost like where Ty Simpson can go into Los Angeles and sit for a little bit. Freeling also can go in and sit for a little bit right now, but I don't know if it's worth taking him over Ty Simpson. I think I'm going to go with Ty Simpson here.
Okay.
The quarterback out of Alabama. I really thought about Freeling because I think that would be a great long-term answer at right tackle for Los Angeles, but also they need a long-term answer at quarterback. That's more important, and I can probably promise you right now that Ty Simpson will be above Monroe Freeling on my personal big board as well. So Ty Simpson, I think, the better overall player, a more valuable position, and they need both those positions. I'm going to go with Ty Simpson, the quarterback out of Alabama, who could be on the board here for Los Angeles in the actual draft at number 13.
It's an interesting debate, and I don't know in an actual draft that they would do it at 13. The only other thing I would say is if they're in heavy win now mode, I think Omar Cooper in this odd scenario obviously would be the pick. But you make a good point. Freeling and Simpson, you're really making just about the same points. And also, I think more so with Freeling, I'll give you this too. He at least would have a shot to compete with McClendon for the job, right? I mean, if you're picking him this high, and maybe they could anyway, picking out of luxury at this point. So, but I get the logic on Simpson too. It's like, okay, you know what? Let's lock it down. And, you could argue that he's the most valuable player on the board remaining. And to get him, and you know me, I think his ideal situation is to sit for a year or two, especially in this offense where you're going to be playing with Puka Nacua long term and you have maybe the best play caller in football. It's hard to deny that. It's a great situation for Simpson still if he were to get there.
And I'll give McClendon this, man. He was a top 20 graded tackle in his third season. So actually, you can go into 2026 and say, hey, can you prove it for one more year? And then you can be our long-term answer at right tackle. If not, then maybe in 2027 we look for another offensive tackle.
All right, Ty Simpson locked in there?
Yep, Ty Simpson.
Ty Simpson gets to the Rams anyway. Wow, how about it? Okay. All right, here we go. Baltimore Ravens, offensive needs. So obviously I can't get into the big group of pass rushers. There's two positions that stand out to me. Number one is wide receiver, where I could go with an Omar Cooper. And actually, very conveniently, the way the board slides at these two positions, wide receiver and interior offensive line, those top two players are the guys that I'm thinking about. So what to me is more important for Lamar Jackson? Do I need one more weapon alongside Zay Flowers, who I think the only thing with Flowers and Cooper is they might be just a tad redundant? Or do I want an immediate starting guard at one of those spots in Emmanuel Pregnon, a guy who we both think should be probably a first-round pick anyway? We really like him. Obviously, there'll be debates about that later, but I think for the Ravens here, it shakes out pretty good because they have needs in the trenches on both sides, interior offensive line, or they could get into the edge defender class, and that's probably certainly where I'll go in our defense-only mock draft. I'm going to build in the trenches. This Ravens team, their identity still is in the trenches, running the football. I think Pregnon's an immediate starter. I'm going to plug him into one of those two guard spots.
I was thinking about him for the next pick right here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But it's a great pick right there. Emmanuel Pregnon going to the Baltimore Ravens. 15 here, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I feel like now it's starting to get tough. There's a couple more guys that are remaining, probably those first five that could go in the actual first round of the draft. But this is where it's starting to feel like it's starting to narrow down here, especially with a team like the Bucs that are generally so stacked up front, right?
Yeah, they have a decent. They could use a guard, but I just don't know if there's a guard here that I love.
Well, do we just? This is the part is now you get into the draft where it's like, okay, these are the guys that wouldn't. You got to start thinking. Is Chase Besantis the call? Or
I'm thinking about tight end too.
I was just gonna say it. You could have some fun with a certain combine freak right here. Remember Kate Otton's.
I think they need a better blocker than Eli Stowers though, with just how many great receivers they have already. It feels like we'll just be adding too much. So I'm kind of thinking about Max Clare here too.
Okay. Oh, you're going Clare
just to bring a different element because I feel like Stowers. They have such a loaded receiving core already that Stowers, who's basically just a receiver in a tight end body. I almost think they need a better blocker at tight end.
Eli Stowers, the Mike Evans replacement?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
maybe he's just the next Mike Evans.
That's true. Mike Evans is a free agent, so we'll see.
Okay, we'll take it easy on the Eli Stowers comps. But anyway.
The Mike Evans at tight ends, yeah.
It is a thought, Claire. And look, I had Claire one spot ahead of Stowers.
Yeah, ironically, I had Stowers above Claire. Yeah.
Because of that, because I feel a little better about the inline ability and kind of the dirty work that he got to do at Ohio State this year. It immediately. I like how we got through 14 and we feel really good about it. All of a sudden we hit 15. And we hit a wall. All of a sudden we just hit a wall.
And I just finished watching Basantis a couple days ago. I didn't love his tape. I do see the upside with him, but I didn't love him to take him over a tight end right here. I'll go with Eli Stowers because of how freaky his combine was and the fact that even before the combine, I had Eli Stowers as tight end 2 in the draft behind Kenyon Sadiq. But I do think Max Clare will be an option too because I think they want more of a blocker at tight end considering how good their receiving core is. But since I had Eli Stowers above Max Clare and since he had an all-time combine, I'll take Eli Stowers here to the Buccaneers.
And again, we get into that point now where we've hit it very suddenly where now you look at, okay, the Bucs, would they look tight end in round 1? Probably not. We know they're scouting heavy in the front 7, edge defender, linebacker. But you know what? Day 2, K. Dalton leaves in free agency. They don't retain him. Kind of have a tight end need. Honestly, the tight end market in free agency is not great. Could be an option here in the 2nd or 3rd round for Tampa.
Absolutely. All right. New York Jets.
Back to the Jets where we already took Mekhi Lemon.
Yep.
We took Mason Taylor last year, so I don't think I'm going tight end again.
Ty Simpson's gone.
Ty Simpson is gone. And you know what? Now that it shook the way it did, I probably would have thought about it.
Number 2?
I would have thought about it here.
Okay.
And again, I think if he were to get to the 2nd round, and the Jets have the first pick of the 2nd round, I think that would be more palatable. Mm-hmm. I just don't love Ty for them in the 1st round when there's other players on the board.
You could double up on receiver.
Honestly. Omar.
I think a wide receiver 3 is almost a bigger need than anything on the offensive line they have right now.
There is one guard spot open. If they're going to keep the offensive line, the rest of it the same, if you have Garrett Bradbury at center and Joe Tippmann at right guard, you still have an opening at left guard.
Could do Max Clare, too, if you want.
I could go with some 12 with Clare and Mason Taylor. My lean, though, is if I'm looking for a starter, maybe I'm a slight bit higher on Basantis than you are, that I could plug Chase Basantis in at left guard and go. And even if they want to make a change and move Joe Tippmann back to center or anything like that, they still, because John Simpson and Elijah Vera Tucker are both free agents. So there is a need for at least interior depth, if not at least one starter at that left guard spot. I'm going to fill that spot. I'm going to go with Chase Basantis here.
Love it.
At 16.
All right, before we get to the second half of this mock draft for the pick that I will sprint the card in, actually, at number 17 overall for the Detroit Lions. Before we do that, though, I want to talk about the sponsor of the show. That is Western and Southern. Our game plan of the week is presented by Western and Southern Financial Group, a game plan for your financial future. You look at this mock draft, this offense-only mock draft right now, a game plan that I actually really like is the New York Giants getting Spencer Fano, the right tackle out of Utah, who I think is actually a serious option for them at number 5 overall in the draft. He is a really good offensive tackle, could play guard too for them. So if they need him to play guard or maybe even center long term for them too, he could do anything for that offensive line. And just like every team wins starts with a great game plan, your future should too. With life insurance built like a championship roster, Western and Southern helps protect you and your family so you can focus on winning today, knowing tomorrow is covered. Whether you're just starting out, building your dynasty, or looking to lock in long-term protection, their coverage options are designed to match your game plan. Visit westernsouthern.com/PFF to get your free life quote and start building your financial game plan today. Western and Southern, built to win, backed by over 130 years of helping people protect what matters most. Dalton, honestly, my game plan of the week might be what I'm about to do here at number 17 overall, and that is take Monroe Freeling, the offensive tackle out of Georgia, here to the Detroit Lions, because Penei Sewell locked in at right tackle, probably the best offensive lineman in football right now. Taylor Decker is coming back for another year at left tackle, but he was very much contemplating retirement this offseason. So who knows? He might retire next year, which I think is a perfect scenario for Monroe Freeling right now. Let him sit on the bench for a year behind Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell, learn from two of the best in the business, and then in 2027 could potentially take over at left tackle or maybe right tackle for Detroit and flip over Penei Sewell to left tackle. So I think Monroe Freeling in the actual draft, this would be a dream scenario for him and for the Lions, getting a developmental guy with a super high ceiling that could develop behind Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker.
I think it's a terrific call, and Dan Campbell has mentioned himself, even with Taylor Decker coming back, he's had a lot of injuries in recent years, and they're going to need some depth anyway. So what you get with a pick like that is, and look, I I actually don't think this is so out of the realm of possibility. I mean, I've mocked Spencer Fano to the Lions a lot, thinking, okay, they could play him on the interior, or maybe eventually he's a tackle. But if they like one of these tackles enough, including Freeling, if he were to get to 17, they might just do that anyway. With as much as that organization values the trenches, I actually think among the last maybe half dozen picks, this might be the most realistic one out of all of them, considering where the Lions are at with their offensive line and with Decker's situation, even being that he's coming back for another year. I think that's an awesome pick.
Yeah, Freeling's number 15 overall on the consensus board right now, and most often is getting mocked to the Detroit Lions. So in the actual draft, he could be a pick here for the Lions at number 17 overall.
Oh, no, absolutely. If he got there, I think they would think about it, considering his talent and how much they value the long-term health of their offense.
Now, I will say, I do love Jake Slaughter, and for a half second I thought about it, but I was like, I'll take the upside for a team that's doing a great job developing players.
That's tough even in this exercise, and I like Slaughter too. I love Slaughter. It's tough to go Slaughter over Freeling.
Yes,
and
for that team especially. Doing that, yeah. And also like has developed Penei Sewell from a freak athlete. He was great at Oregon too, but freak athlete into a superstar. I think Freeling hopefully could have a similar developmental arc with the Lions there. Another NFC North team here, Dalton in the Minnesota Vikings at 18.
It's a hard one. This is a hard one. Because, I mean, their offensive line is mostly intact as long as especially Ryan Kelly's coming back. I've seen Brian O'Neill at least floated as a cut candidate, but I don't think it's going to happen. They're pretty loaded at receiver unless I just want to keep stacking there.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this running back? Do I start thinking about backs here? I mean, look, Aaron Jones is getting cut. Oh, boy.
I will say, with all the off-field issues that Jordan Addison's going through, though.
That's also a thing. Maybe I just go with the value and take Cooper.
Could do it.
And just add him in. Jalen Naylor's a free agent. They're thin in the backfield, but I don't like taking a back over some of these other players here for this team, and I think they're also probably going to look into free agency. Tell you what, if Ty Simpson was on the board, I'd go there.
Yeah,
considering how much they are known to be trying to at least find someone to compete with or even replace J.J. McCarthy. If Simpson was here, I would take him. I think I'm going to go with the value pick here. I'm going to go with Omar Cooper. I think you just add another yak threat to this offense. You've got Jefferson. You mentioned it. We don't know what Addison's situation is, but if he is playing, he's obviously really good on the outside too. I'm going to stack up the weaponry for whoever is throwing the football for this team. I'll take it. I'll take the value with Omar Cooper.
Love it. Number 19 here, the Carolina Panthers. I'm also looking to add a weapon to this offense.
Oh.
But I also could look at tackle, too. I'm thinking about that, too, because of, obviously, the sticky situation with Ike Ekwonu and all of his injuries he's going through right now, too. So
I think the guy that I would think about, I'll tell you what, you could look in interior. You could look in the interior, too, when you look at they don't have a starting center right now. There's that also. I think the guy that I would lean in on here is Lomu.
That's what I'm looking at,
I think he's the most immediately ready to start on the left side, if that's what you're going for. But there's a... Boy, it could be your Jake Slaughter spot, too.
It could be. I do love Jake Slaughter. But I think I'm going to go with Caleb Lomu, just because, like I said, the injury with Ekwonu, I just don't know what that's going to look like for this year and for his long-term career, too, with how bad it looks right now. So I'm going to go with Caleb Lomu, who's a really good pass blocker, needs some work in the run game, but I do think he could be a long-term left tackle for a team and be a pretty solid one at that, and especially in pass protection. So I'll go with Caleb Lomu, the offensive tackle out of Utah, with this pick here at 19.
And what makes that interesting for any teams remaining, I look at a Pittsburgh or maybe a Cleveland. I got a bad feeling this shook out bad for me with the Browns pick, but those are three basically at least proven college left tackles are now gone.
Yeah.
And Proctor, Freeling, and Lomu. Now that situation gets pretty interesting when it comes to, I've talked about the offensive tackle need here for the Cowboys, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, San Fran, we don't know the Trent Williams situation. We'll talk about those teams when we get there, but I've got the Cowboys right now, and certainly you didn't make my life very easy here.
You have Kenny Sadiq already at 12.
I got Sadiq already. I think I am going to go back to now the offensive tackle situation. And again, I think Guyton and Steele are going to start for this team, but the seat might be a little warm, and one or both of them are going to need to have good years. I think a guy that would be suited best for that situation, now, again, I don't think this will actually happen. Maybe on day 2 if they had a shot. Would be a Maxi Ionichor from Arizona State, right? This is another guy, kind of like you mentioned with Freeling. I would not hate him sitting for a year. He's a wicked athlete. He has not been playing football for very long. I think there's a lot of potential. You can see the athletic potential and his movement skills. He played on the right side at Arizona State. I think he's athletically, I think he's athletic enough that he could flip over and play on the left side, say to replace Guyton, or, we can figure that out as we go. But I think when it comes to now offensive tackle depth, and the potential for what this could be in the future, I'm going to go with Iannachor for Dallas here and shore up the offensive tackle depth and possibly the long-term answer.
I like it. So Max Iannachor, the tackle from Arizona State, who had a pretty good Senior Bowl, goes to the Dallas Cowboys at number 20 overall. Here at number 21 with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm going to go with Blake Miller.
Good call.
Yeah, I love it. The more I watch him, man, I'm actually a bigger fan of Blake Miller than I thought I was going to be going into it. He's been a 4-year starter at Clemson. I think he has 54 consecutive starts at Clemson. He never missed a game at Clemson, including the bowl game. He actually played in the bowl game this past year, too. And honestly, he's reliable in the fact that he's on the field for every single play of every single game. And he's also reliable in the fact that he's just been a rock-solid player for 4 years in a row. You can see right there his 3-year PFF grade, 70-plus every single year. I believe in 2022 he was also above a 70 that year, too. So 4 straight years of just really rock-solid play as Clemson's right tackle. He also had a great combine, one of the best combines of any offensive lineman in attendance too. So he's a really good athlete. So he's got experience. He's a ready-made player. I think he's ready to start immediately in the NFL. He could be a surprise first-round pick in the draft, in the actual NFL draft. And for a Steelers team right now that needs rock-solid play at tackle, which they don't really have right now with Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu, I think Blake Miller would provide that for the Steelers.
I think the fit part of that and the road that I would assume that goes down is that Broderick Jones is very much on the hot seat going into 2026. And with Troy Fautanu, as we know, he played on the left side at Washington, so you flip Fautanu back over to his natural position on the left side, you plug in Blake Miller on the right side, then you got something cooking there in Pittsburgh. I do think offensive tackle, and even at left guard there's an underrated need with Isaac Seumalo as a free agent. That left side of that offensive line, I think, is going to be, one, something that they at least look into improving, and two, it's going to be very heavily under scrutiny going into this 2026 season. But I think that's a really good pick. Probably the best player we have left on the board here. I'm going to check one more time, clicking these offensive positions. But the best player we had left on the board, and I think a really good fit there in Pittsburgh.
So number 22 is the Los Angeles Chargers in Dalton. Their biggest need, most likely, is interior offensive line. Is there any interior offensive lineman that you like enough here to take a 22?
I think several, actually, now that you mention it, and a couple of guys. I'm actually going to leave the offensive tackles on the board here as far as the listing, because I think even
Jennings Dunker.
These first two guys that show up, both Dunker and Tiernan, I think they're zone scheme guards. I think Tiernan is a solid pass protector. Obviously, he's very tall. I think 6'8" he is. But
what do you think of Brian Parker? Because I actually really liked him when I was watching him too.
Parker's another guy who
he could be like a Graham Barton, like going to tackle at center.
Same exact thing, right? Yeah. It's a same school, same thing. Where you got a lot of athletes here, and that's the advantage that I have. So I think, man, Dunker is so good. I just think about
Slaughter's still there.
Slaughter is still there. I mean, this is going to be a thing with where we're recording this before free agency has started. And I do this would absolutely change if I knew the Chargers were getting Tyler Linderbaum. Man, well, then I might take another Iowa offensive lineman. This is a tough call because Slaughter fits. Sam Hecht is probably athletic enough to fill in with that system. Man, Jennings Dunker though in that outside with Mike McDaniel. If they can just fix his stance and get him to fire off the ball a little better, man. Because I obviously you're moving him inside with Slater and Alt there. Don't you feel like Jim Harbaugh would just love Jennings Dunker?
Yeah, I think it would.
I think that's where I'm going with it.
All right.
I think I'm going to move him inside and just all that experience under Tim Lester the last couple of years at Iowa. And with the way Mike McDaniels and his outside zone scheme works and the way that they're going to try to run laterally with this offensive line, I'm going to do it. I'm going to move him inside and say Jennings Dunker gets to be a starter at one of those guard spots.
Love it. Jennings Dunker goes to Los Angeles. I think it's a great scheme fit in the outside zone scheme that Mike McDaniel runs. And I think Jim Harbaugh would love the tape that he watches at Iowa with Jennings Dunker. Also just looks like an offensive lineman too, which I think Jim Harbaugh will love as well. Number 23 here, the Philadelphia Eagles, kind of looking at the offensive line, maybe a tight end actually for Philadelphia too here. I might, so I'm looking at Max Clare, the tight end out of Ohio State. And there's some good offensive linemen that are available here too. I'm not going to take Jake Slaughter, even though I love him, to Philly.
It would be more likely a guard if you're going.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about guards. I'm thinking of like a guy like Caleb Tiernan and move him inside to guard.
Could do that. I think
Keelan Rutledge is available.
They probably would like Rutledge too, just the physical, angry nature that he brings. I think that makes some sense.
I might just do Max Clare though.
I think that's reasonable. I mean, it's been basically assumed that Goddard's gone. I think he might have even said so as much himself. I mean, if you're looking at that, and obviously they're going to need, because they need multiple players at that position, they're going to have to find at least one decent free agent to fill in there. But I think Clare would make a lot of sense.
And Goddard's coming off the lowest graded year of his career. He's on the wrong side of 30 years old right now too. So even if Goddard's back on a 1 or 2 year deal, I still think tight end is a need for Philadelphia. So I think Max Clare would provide that kind of be like a Dallas Goedert light, as a really good receiver and a really good blocker too. So I think Max Clare would be the next tight end of the future for Philadelphia here at 23.
I'm in on that. I'm in on that big time. I think you talk about, especially with Clare and his athleticism, all the seams and crossers, all those, just a lot of throws that Jalen Hurts is really comfortable with throwing to tight ends. I think Clare can fill that in.
All right, Dalton, you are up here at number 24 overall, the Cleveland Browns, after taking Jordan Tyson with the number 6 overall pick.
Yeah, I've been feeling like I don't know that I want to double up at wide receiver. I suppose I could, because a lot of the offensive line options have dwindled, especially a lot of our favorite ones that could be first round or top 50 picks here. And I mean, that Browns offensive line situation, I like the Titus Howard trade that gives them a right tackle, and they're certainly paying him to play right tackle, but we got 4 other spots to fill, right? We don't know what DeJuan Jones' situation is. The interior is kind of a mess. So I lean more in on these offensive line picks, and I think, I could go in any direction, right? I could take you just took actually I know you love Jake Slaughter here. I know we've been talking about him, and maybe he could be a plug and play starter for Cleveland here. Sam Hecht is another guy, obviously well thought of. Connor Lew at center, but I still look at that offensive tackle position. And even if I don't have any surefire bets here, is there a guy maybe that I could take a chance on or could move inside? And I think Caleb Tiernan is that guy out of Northwestern for me. Look, it's kind of a weird build, 6'8" measured in officially, short arms and pretty average play strength. I think he would fit better in a zone run scheme, but we know this guy can pass protect, right? He's been a dynamite pass protector for Northwestern the last couple of years. And if they want to give him a shot to play left tackle, then so be it, even with some of his deficiencies. I think that could make some sense. And if not, I think he's his own scheme guard. I think he can move inside and play left guard and maybe even start right away for a team, at least with his pass pro ability. And at this point, the Browns just need anything they can find on their offensive line, right? Because they're replacing all 5 starters, and so far, at least before free agency has started, they've gotten one of those 5 starters. They're going to add more veterans. I think they should draft multiple offensive linemen when the actual draft comes around, but I think Tiernan is probably my next favorite guy here among the ones that we have. I think that's the more likely. They got to find somebody who could play either tackle or guard. I think Tiernan is that guy.
Yeah, I'm glad one of the guys you mentioned there for the Browns at number 24, you didn't go with him, because I am sprinting this card in here for the Chicago Bears. That is Jake Slaughter, the center out of Florida, because Drew Dahlman had a shocking retirement at 27 years old, one of the best centers in football. Also, the Bears' backup center, Ryan Bates, he's an unrestricted free agent as well. So Jake Slaughter, who I think is being really underrated right now in this draft process. He had an excellent combine, tested above a 99th percentile in the relative athletic score. And also, he has been one of the 10 highest graded centers in college football in each of the last 3 years. And over the last 3 years, he is the highest graded center in college football. So elite tape against elite competition in the SEC. He's a top flight athlete as well. 3 years of elite production. I think Jake Slaughter is firmly worth a second-round pick at least in this mock draft, in this draft right now. And in this mock draft for a Bears team that has a need at center now, with Drew Dahlman retiring, I think Jake Slaughter is a perfect fit for Ben Johnson's offense.
It's a pretty good center class with several day 2 players, right? You talk about Slaughter, you talk about Sam Hecht from Kansas State, Connor Lew from Auburn. I think, there's been a lot of talk that Brian Parker, the right tackle from Duke, is going to move inside and play center. There's some real good options here. Logan Jones from Iowa is another one, and I think a lot of these guys are good system fits for the Bears. Now, I think what they're going to do is bring in a veteran on a 1 or 2 year contract anyway, but definitely could see them on day 2 finding a long-term center and one of these guys. They're bringing in Tyler Biotish, the former Commanders center, for a visit. I don't know that. I think Tyler Linderbaum might be out of their price range. It's a great fit if you ever got Linderbaum in Ben Johnson's offense, but salary cap is kind of something that would hold that back, and Linderbaum looks like he's going to get an absolute monster contract. Graham Glasgow from Detroit is another guy that I think who has familiarity with Ben Johnson who could be an option, but I think either way, a long-term center on day 2 could be an option. I think it's realistic that Jake Slaughter eventually could end up a Chicago Bear anyway.
Yep, number 26 overall, the Buffalo Bills. Kind of a feeling where you might be leaning here for Buffalo, but what are you going to do here for the Bills?
Almost feels like I got to go wide receiver, right? Like I have to take somebody here that's got some talent to win one-on-one, right? Almost take a gamble on the physical tools, and the guy that sticks out the most to me there. And look, they could go with, another reliable player in Jeremy Bernard. I like Skylar Bell, but I think he would be a little bit redundant to Khalil Shakir. I need an X receiver. And the highest rated one I have left here and the highest rated one we have here on the board, I'm going to take the gamble here on Chris Bell from Louisville. The size and speed combination, he can box out smaller corners to make contested catches. He can absolutely fly once he gets the motor running after the catch. Not the most sophisticated route runner, but I think for the Bills on a well-built X receiver to take the chance like this, I could actually see Bell eventually being a player they look into if he's still there for them in the second round. Because for me personally, I would go defense with their first-round pick. I know there's been talk about what about Denzel Boston or Casey Concepcion, guys like that, maybe an Omar Cooper. But offense only, obviously wide receiver is their bigger need. I'm going to go with Chris Bell from Louisville.
Yep. I think he's a really good fit for Josh Allen and that Bills offense right there. And I get why you didn't take, a guy like Elijah Surratt, whereas, a guy who's been busting in Buffalo is Keon Coleman, whose biggest issue is he can't really separate that well. Elijah Surratt also doesn't separate that well either. But Chris Bell, he has separation issues too, but at least he's a really good athlete that maybe could become a good separator with more development as a route runner later on. Here at 27, I have the San Francisco 49ers. I will also be going with a wide receiver for the 49ers. I'm actually going to go with the guy I just mentioned before in Elijah Surratt, who I know has separation issues for sure, but he has been really good over his career at James Madison and at Indiana. The past 2 seasons, he was one of the best receivers in the country. This past year, he was Indiana's number 1 receiver, even though they had Omar Cooper Jr., who went earlier in this mock draft, and a future star in Charlie Becker as a sophomore too. It was still Elijah Surratt. That was both Curtis Rourke and Fernando Mendoza's favorite target at Indiana. So he's a rock-solid player. I think he's worth a second-round pick in this draft. His separation concerns won't have him go in the first round, and his speed concerns will have him go in the first round of the actual draft. But in an offense-only mock draft, he is well worth a late first-round pick in this all-offense mock draft.
No, I agree. I think there's 2 ways you can go about wide receiver for the 49ers, including at pick 27 here. One is you get the Yak replacement that they never really got for Deebo Samuel when they let him go. Or 2, if Jawan Jennings is leaving in free agency, you got to find somebody who can beat man-to-man coverage. You saw there an 89.4 receiving grade against man coverage this year for Surratt. He can beat press coverage. He can win those contested situations. He's got great hands, right? He's really good in the red zone. So I think there are 2 different ways you could go about it. I wouldn't have blamed you.
Could have gone for Zachariah Branch there.
I wouldn't have blamed you for a Jeremy Bernard or Zachariah Branch or a Skylar Bell there either. There's really, I don't think either way is wrong because you got a lot to replace in that receiving core where right now Ricky Pearsall is really the only guy that's locked in for 2026. So Surratt is the call, and I don't hate it at all.
Yep. Number 28, the Houston Texans.
Well, eventually I had to get here, and we got to look at this offensive line. I mean, no question about it, whether it's a center or a guard or even a right tackle at this point with Titus Howard gone. We got any option. I think, our options have really dwindled down here, haven't they? We've taken a lot. We got to get a count on how many offensive linemen we've taken, but that's just the lesson. You can never have too many of them. Question is, do I want to go center? Do I want to go guard? I don't mind, especially with the way that Nick Caley runs those duo schemes in his offense. Man, I don't hate the idea of Keelan Rutledge here. Just give me an angry downhill blocker. I don't mind that. Sam Hecht would be a really good call, too. I think either way. Right?
I do love Brian Parker, too. The tackle out of Duke who's probably going to play center in the league.
I do like Parker. I don't know that he's the system fit that I want here for Houston.
Yeah, he's probably better in his own scheme.
Yeah, he absolutely would be. I think very much like Graham Barton, he is. Obviously doesn't have the length to play tackle, but you move him inside and he's athletic. He can get to the second level. On a different team, I might take Parker here. I think my decision now is between Hecht and Rutledge. That would be the big question for me. Both of them played in a lot of gap scheme. We know K-State obviously they ran a lot of those power schemes there. And Georgia Tech, same thing. I mean, Keely, you want just an angry run blocker. This is a hard one. I think they'll try to find a center on the veteran market. I'm going to go with Keelan Rutledge here to Houston. I mean, saying kind of like Cleveland, but a lot better team, obviously. They just need bodies right now. The Ariante Ursary, I would say, is the only guy that I know is starting for them in 2026 at the moment. I'm going to go with Rutledge. I'm going to add an angry downhill run blocker for Nick Caley's run scheme here.
Love it. All right, I'm up here with the Kansas City Chiefs, who would now have another first-round pick in the draft after trading away Trent McDuffie to the LA Rams. We took Caden Proctor with that number 9 overall pick. I think Dalton, the Chiefs just could not stand not picking in the late 20s, early 30s.
Oh, sure.
That's why they made the
trade. It's too much of a habit not to, right? It
like
felt uncomfortable. It's like, okay, well, we'll pick at 9, but we don't really want to. Yeah.
Yeah, they traded away an all-pro corner. Like, we have to pick in the late 20s. It's just tradition at this point. But at number 29 overall here for the Kansas City Chiefs, I think I'm going to go with a guy that I still like in this draft. I get the concerns with him, and there are concerns with him, but I like Zachariah Branch a lot, the wide receiver out of Georgia. Really good athlete, really good feet, good footwork. The big concern with him is he just a gadget receiver? Because he was used, over half of his targets were screen passes this year at Georgia. He's really good after the catch, but the question is, can he be more than that? Can he be more of a downfield receiver? Can he run a diverse route tree? Those are the question marks right now, but I think with the offensive play caller like Andy Reid, he would find a lot of creative ways to get this guy the football. I think Zachariah Branch would be a really fun fit in that offense, and they need more talent in that receiver room too. I really like Zachariah Branch, but I do get the boomer bust nature of his play. But if he's going to boom, it's most likely going to be in a place like Kansas City.
If you're going receiver, it depends on which type of guy we're looking at. Obviously, we don't know Rashee Rice's situation off the field either. You've got Xavier Worthy there as a smaller, faster guy as well. So do you go with Branch, who the Chiefs generally lead the league in their screen attempts anyway, so it is a huge part of their offense, and obviously Branch is used to that from his days both at USC and Georgia? Or do you go with more of the size and vertical speed type threat? Would Chris Brazzell be an option here, right? They kind of used Tyquan Thornton in that kind of mode last year. I think there's some other guys in the past that they've had. You think about Marquez Valdez-Scantling. You think about Sammy Watkins, guys who can get down the field. I think if you're going receiver, it's probably between Branch and Brazzell. Also, any thoughts at any of the running backs here?
I thought about Jonah Coleman for a second, and Jadarian Price is the top running back on this board right here, but I like Jonah Coleman a little bit more. I thought about it. I think the receiver need is pretty much as big as the one at running back, and I just think the receiver talent that's still available here is much better than the ones we have at running back.
I agree. Okay, so you're going Branch here?
Yep.
Okay, Zachariah Branch, Kansas City. Denver. This is fun. They still need their jokers, as Sean Payton calls them. And I think the two spots where I could really use that are either at running back or at tight end. Now, Broncos tight ends were dead last in the league in receiving grade this past year. So that would really be an option. The problem is do we go... Is it Sam Roush, who didn't produce much at Stanford but has the athleticism? Is it Michael Trigg, who can really produce down the seams, especially as a receiver, but can't really block much? Is it Jack Endries, who's more traditional? Justin Jolie we like also? Or do I go with a back? Do I take a swing at a Jadarian Price?
Could.
Do I play it a little safer with Jonah Coleman and just complement him with R.J. Harvey, which I think could make a lot of sense with Harvey on passing downs? I think I'm leaning in on the backs here.
Okay. I don't think you can go wrong with the guys that are on the board right now.
I know there's so many people that would take Price with the physical ability, the home run ability, and I get that. That's the question. That's the big question for me is it this team, if I want safe and call it for Sean Payton Mark Ingram-ish, right, when he had Ingram and Kamara and Ingram was kind of the safer early down option, I would go Coleman. And if I really want some home run ability in this offense, I go with Price because their offensive line is really good and they can open those creases for him. Vision should not be an issue behind this Denver offensive line. Oh, this is a hard one. I think I'm going Price.
Okay.
I think I need more explosive runs out of this team. And again, Coleman, to me, is a safe. I think Coleman is one of the easiest to project players in the entire draft. We know what Jonah Coleman is, and he's going to be solid. But this Denver offense on the ground, to me, needs home runs. I'm going to take the gamble on Price and pair him with R.J. Harvey.
Love it. Jadarian Price going to the Denver Broncos at number 30 overall. I am up here with the New England Patriots at number 32 overall, who just cut, by the way, Stephon Diggs. So receiver, I think, is suddenly, you got Kayshon Boutte, you got Matt Collins, you got Demario Douglas, but you got Kyle Williams, of course, coming off his rookie year too. Receiver could be a need, though. I'm also looking at offensive line here, but I think the receiver talent here is still pretty good. Let me look at my big board real quick, who I had the next receiver that's available. For me, it would be Malachi Fields, the wideout out of Notre Dame, who I know didn't have a great combine, but I still like him. I also like Antonio Williams a lot too.
I think if you go receiver here, and this is going to be a debate as far as New England's been the biggest team named in some of these A.J. Brown rumors, I think if you go receiver here, I do think you need someone with size. Like it should, in theory, be Brazel or Fields. Because a lot of those other guys you named, Kayshon Boutte can get downfield, but he's not big. Demario Douglas is small. Kyle Williams is small. Matt Collins is bigger, obviously, at 6'4", 6'5", but he's not really the consistent threat, right? He's there to do a lot of the dirty work in the blocking. I think if you were going receiver, I'd probably say Brazel or Fields.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Malachi Fields. I like Fields more than Brazel right now. So, again, it wasn't a great combine for him, but it was a great Senior Bowl for him, too. He's got the size that you look for at wide receiver. Again, not a great separator, but I do like Malachi Fields. I think he's a little bit more than most bigger receivers that you usually get in the draft. So I'm going to take Malachi Fields back-to-back Notre Dame players here in this mock draft.
All right, look at that, back-to-back Fighting Irish working their way in. Did we
have make it 3 in a row if you want to do Billy Schrouth to the Seahawks?
That's actually not the worst idea you could have had there. I mean, I think the two positions that stick out to me are, do I want a right guard that I could potentially start, or do I want a receiver? So I look at the guards, Jalen Farmer, Billy Schrouth, like you mentioned. Let's work a little further.
So you think they're bringing back – by the way, we're pre-recording this because I'm going on vacation next week, so this is obviously before free agency. You think they're bringing back Kenneth Walker at running back, basically?
Oh, that's another good point. No, without them franchising him, I can't be sure of that.
Jonah Coleman, keep him in Washington, keep him home, low moving cost.
Actually, for their system, I would actually like a Mike Washington better. I think there's too much value here at receiver for me to go running back here. You still have, I mean, if Charbonnet can get healthy, I think I'm going to go receiver here because there are some of the guards that I do like, but we've had some interior guys come off the board.
Yeah, I think Parker's more of a center than a guard.
I can't take Bo Stevens is a system fit, but that's too far down. I can't pass up some of these other guys. I'm going to lean in on receiver.
Okay.
And I think when you think about Rashid Shaheed being a free agent and is reportedly going to have a pretty good market here, maybe even with his now two-time offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak, maybe the Raiders are an option for him. I'm going to go receiver. I just feel like the value is better. And if I think about somebody who can get vertical in the way that they wanted Shaheed to attack safeties, and they want that second vertical threat to open things up for Smith and Jigba and for Cooper Kupp, I'm going to go Chris Brazel here.
Okay.
I think running back, if Kenneth Walker leaves, I don't think it's something they would attack with this 32nd pick anyway. Even if Jeremiah Love is the only back that is off the board at that point, I think it's more of a day 2 concern. I think you're right about some of the names. Mike Washington, Jadarian Price, Jonah Coleman. I think these are names that could come up for Seattle on day 2 if Kenneth Walker leaves. But to get that vertical threat, and I think the idea of Kubiak, remember too, he had for a bit Marquez Valdez-Scantling in New Orleans as just a guy who 2 or 3 times a game you could take your home run shots with, and he can constantly take safeties out of the picture. I think Chris Brazel, as a complement to the rest of what they have, would be really good. I'm going to go Brazel here at 32 and round out this first round mock.
All right,
for us.
Chris Brazel.
Offense.
All offense, yeah.
Very 32 picks on offense.
Pretty unique mock draft that we did. We're going to do an all defense mock draft coming out very, very soon. Next week, actually, will come out as well. So, yeah, obviously it's not very realistic to what the actual NFL draft will be, but for every single team in the NFL, if they don't go with a defensive player, it is cool to see, okay, what positions on offense could they be targeting? And for the other side of the ball, we'll do a defense. And what if the Raiders don't take Fernando Mendoza at number 1 overall? What defender would they take with that number 1 overall pick? So kind of a unique mock draft. I know it's kind of gets monotonous a lot of times, all the mock drafts that you see time and time again. So we want to make it a little bit different for you guys for this one. But plenty more content coming on this channel. Next up, we'll have our top 10 defensive tackles in the 2026 NFL draft coming out before our all-defense mock draft coming out very, very soon as well. For our producers back there in Tyler, Eli, and Quinn, for Dalton, Wasserman, I'm Max Chadwick. Again, we'll see you guys later on this week with our top 10 defensive tackles in this year's draft.